Greetings Exiles and welcome to another League start to endgame build guide. This time the Divine Ire Shimmeron Inquisitor. A build focused around an item I wanted to basically play forever combined with one of my most favorite skills and ascendancies. This build offers a fun and unique charging up and then releasing a huge laser beam playstyle. It deals respectable damage and has a strong map clear. But this is definitely one of my weaker builds because the main focus was to remove a lot of the randomness which Divine Ire has pretty much built in and make a smooth Divine Ire character for anybody who wants to play the skill. Nonetheless, I cleared the whole game on it. This includes Uber Elder, Sirus, tier 16 juiced maps, all League mechanic bosses, Delve 83 and all of that on Awakening level 8 in Harvest League and on a relatively low budget of around only 7 Exalteds, where the Impulsor alone, which by the way is not even mandatory, was 4 Exalteds. This build is for anybody who wants to try Divine Ire or just play something of meta. Despite it being made around the Shimmeron Wand, there are actually a lot of options in gearing. So no matter if you are a beginner or advanced player, the build works as League starter and scales pretty well into the endgame. The reason why I made another Divine Ire build was the inconsistency of my multi-conversion Divine Ire Trickster, where sometimes you one-shot bosses and in other occasions you deal barely any damage. If you actually do not like to play Divine Ire, with just a few small changes on the tree and some rolls on your gear, you can simply play it as Stormbrand, Arc, or even the new spell Crackling Lance if you are interested in those. All the footage you will see in this video is on the relatively cheap Divine Ire variant. As always, PoE, timestamps and everything else is in the video description, and make sure to install the PoE community patch. Nearly everything can be found within the PoE notes section, so make sure you check that out as well. Hi there! This build, at least in my opinion, is actually very balanced, meaning that there are no obvious strengths and weaknesses for me. The damage is quite good and consistent, and you can scale the build's defense to some incredible level if you choose to do so. The Inquisitor Ascendancy also grants you elemental element immunity and a lot of regen for a really smooth playstyle. The only weakness is actually that the playstyle itself might kill you if you are not cautious about your positioning, because you need to stand still in order to channel up stages for maximum DPS, which can get you in trouble in a few situations. Some items might seem to be expensive, but those uniques will actually carry you through every content in the game, which makes them more than just worth their money. The playstyle is straightforward. Literally. You hold down Divine Ire to channel stages, and when you release, you will fire a high damaging beam straightforward. When you are close to enemies, like enemies that are within the circle around you that you can see while channeling, you will get additional stages, so you can use that to your advantage if the situation allows it. Against bosses, you want to try to stay close enough to them to get the additional charging speed, which will result in more than double damage if played perfectly, since the charging also deals meaningful damage around you. For even more damage, drop your Orb of Storms for easy curse application against tough targets as well. Now that you got an overview over the character, let's get a little bit more specific. As always, a lot of additional info can be found within the PoE notes section. Keep that in mind if you have any questions. Let's start the section with how to level the character to maps. I leveled with a combination of Purifying Flame and Orb of Storms or Stormbrand until I started using Divine Ire on level 28. At that point, you can of course still use the before mentioned skills to amplify your damage and utility to your liking. As Templar ascending to an Inquisitor, the first Ascendancy node I took were the utility ones in Sanctuary and after that Pious Path. those will make the character feel very tanky and smooth. After that, Righteous Providence and Inevitable Judgment for the big damage. Inquisitor and Shimmeron are basically made for each other. A perfect match that I am going to talk about once we talked about Shimmeron itself in the gearing section. As Bandit, I went to help area first because mana regen, resistances and crit multi are valuable stats early on. For the deep late game with good gear, you would then swap to the 2 passive points instead. As with all the other builds, I do not want to go over every single gear piece here because you got everything within the PoE with examples and roles you want to look out for. I only want to go over a few specifics here. First of all, there are multiple gear sets, and I'm going to focus on the endgame setup. Recommended progression steps once you reach maps are within the PoE note section as well to make sure you reach your endgame character as fast as possible. Let's have a look at uniques now and start with the core item that this build is evolving around, the Shimmeron Wand. Most decisions to build this character were made based on using that weapon. It grants a high amount of flat and spell damage and introduces a strong power charge scaling along with some nice block chance. Power charges, then why are you not playing Assassin or Occultist instead, you might ask? Well, that's because with enough power charges you will reach close to 100% crit chance without being an Assassin. And the Occultist Ascendancy doesn't really grant that much, or doesn't really grant things that we want in this build. And using a lightning spell together with a lot of lightning damage from the wands means you would need elemental penetration, which in most cases is not that easy to get to deal any meaningful damage. This is where the Ascendancy fits perfectly into the build because of the elemental resistance ignorance from Inevitable Judgment on crits, and as I said, nearly 100% chance to crit. This makes Divine Ire, that in its nature is very inconsistent, a skill that feels very good to use in almost any situation. But as always, if something sounds really strong, there is a downside. The same for the wands. If you have the wands equipped and you critted recently, you are going to take a 200 lightning DPS degen per power charge. And when dual wielding those wands with 6 power charges, this means an unmitigated degen of 2400 lightning damage per second. With 75% lightning resistance, you are still left with a 600 DPS degen. And this is where the second part of the Ascendancy is the perfect fit for this item to utilize its full power. Sanctuary and Pyeth Path together grant you not only elemental ailment immunity, but a lot of life, energy shield and mana regeneration. We are then going to be playing with Mind Over Matter in combination with Eldritch Battery from our helmet, which will then split the degen and most other incoming damage to apply to a life and energy shield at the same time, which in return makes both regen sources even more valuable because they will consistently be regenerating parallelly. Tough word. Without the MOM-EB combo, the degen slowly drains your energy shield down to 0, and this makes any investment into maximum energy shield basically worthless. So yeah, Shimmeron plus Inquisitor are a perfect match. Not only for Divine Ire, but basically any spell that you can scale with crit and lightning damage. As helmet, as I already mentioned, the Devouring Diadem is best in slot in almost any case for this build. It allows us to use an additional big damage hour and grants Eldritch Battery, which we need as explained before. As body armor, I played with an Impulsar. The Undeath explosions help you when clearing and are simply so satisfying that you don't want to miss them. You can obviously choose a rare energy shield life armor with nasty influence rolls on there, but those are usually at least double in price. The last unique, which is also not mandatory, is a Mark of the Shaper, which in combination with an Elder influenced ring grants a lot of damage and also respectable defenses from life and energy shield. The rest of the gear is rare, so pretty easy. Make sure to cap out all your elemental resistances and get the necessary attributes. Also stack as much life and energy shield as possible. You can also go for damage rolls like cast speed, +1 gems and crit multi. In addition to that, I also crafted minus mana cost for channeling skills to make the build feel a lot smoother in low regen maps. On duels, go for life and maybe energy shield if you can as defensive, and crit multi or cast speed as offensive priorities, and if still necessary you can also go for resistances and attributes. For the later stages of the build, I also recommend getting a Solitary Watcher's Eye, which are usually very cheap if you compare them to other Watcher's Eyes, but yeah, all info about the Watcher's Eyes can be found within the PoE notes section. There are no really good enchants for this build, but if you can get them, then I would recommend plus 40% damage increase on the helmet for your Divine Ire. You can also play around with some mana reservation ones, but that's up to you. On the gloves, reflection or light are always nice options, and on the boots, either movement speed or attack and cast speed are usually the best options in almost any case. There are 3 mandatory flasks as for many life and crit based builds. An instant life flask as an emergency button once you see your HP dropping low, a diamond flask which will, while active, basically means 100% chance to crit, and a quicksilver flask for mapping to be even faster. I also went for a silver flask, or if you have the currency, a Sinner Swallow to get the onslaught, which is another damage and movement speed buff. As last flask, I recommend a granite flask, especially a Rumi's concoction. You get a lot of block from the ones, which added to the block you get on the tree will make up for a huge defensive boost while active. Also, make sure to get blade and curse immunity for maps on your magic flasks. You do not need elemental ailment immunity because of your ascendancy, which allows you to actually go for poison immunity if you want instead. Anointment. You already know the drill. I always recommend freedom of movement for early mapping because of the movement speed and phasing and basically no cost. Later on, I suggest you go for Singular Focus for a strong mix of damage and utility if you're playing a channeling skill, or Arcane Potency to boost your crit even more. As defense, you want something with life or energy shield, regen or block, just the defense you think you need the most. Let's move over to the skills now. You can find all the setups and links within the PoE, so I will only go over a few specific things. First of all, put the links wherever they fit best into your gear for easy color setups. That's especially true for your forelings. The only foreling that has to be in a specific item are your auras in the helmet devouring diadem. Before you have that one, you won't be able to activate all 3 of them, so I suggest leaving out hatred in the beginning. You can see that I was using a Val discipline. Do not forget to activate your normal discipline though, and use the Val version only if you see your ES job as some kind of an emergency button, kinda like a life flask for your energy shield, which doesn't grant immediate energy shield, but it will start your recharge. Other than that, there's one special setup I was using, which is a level 8 Stormbrand linked to a level 1 cast when damage taken and life leech. This will then mean that you have a strong regen and leech for both life and energy shield to keep you topped in most situations, even with the heavy Shimmeron degen. I believe I say this for the first time ever, but in this build the Pantheon can actually play an important role, especially early on with bad gear. As Major, all of the gods got their use cases, so make sure to choose whatever you think you need and check the PoE for some additional information. As Minor, Garukan grants situational dodge and some movement speed. Gruthkul would be some defense because you sometimes get close to enemies. And as always, Shakari if you're having problems with chaos and poison. And there you have it, my Divine Ire Shimmeron Inquisitor. My quest to make Divine Ire a viable, consistent skill. Let me know if you liked it. I hope I didn't forget anything important, but if you still have questions, look through the PoE notes, YouTube comments, and maybe check the Discord or come by my stream during league start at twitch.tv/play_like_J. Links for all of those are in the video description. Feel free to ask anything that's unanswered and make sure to like and subscribe for more awesome PoE, upcoming PoE 2 and future ARPG guides, discussions and rankings. But that's it from me for now. Enjoy the Sirus Awakening 8 kill and I will see you in Rayclast. Maybe as a Divine Ire Inquisitor? Good luck and thank you very much for watching. I am Jay and I'm out.
Fury of the Cosmos!
What's this? A real challenge? You've finally caught my attention. Die. Die.
Why run? What's the point? Obliteration! You are nothing!
The others found strength in their projections. They became reliant on them. I am not so foolish. Die.
Beyond, there is only horror.
Be silent. Die. Die.
Why run? What's the point? Rain of stars! Obliteration! Embrace nothingness. Fury of the Cosmos!
Is life really interesting enough to warrant all this pain?
Beyond, there is only horror.
Die.
This city is nothing! Be utterly annihilated! Glorious flames! Fury of the Cosmos! You are nothing! Be utterly annihilated!
Death, my heart races. I am alive. Feel the thrill of
The void! Everlasting fire! Die.
you will long for
Non-existence! Everlasting fire!
You will long for
Non-existence, die. Everlasting fire! Die.
feel the thrill of
The void! Everlasting fire! Die.
I felt something